Unlike God, the devil doesn't need a relationship with you. He just needs an opportunity. And sometimes that opportunity is just a mustard seed of scarcity, a mustard seed of doubt, a mustard seed of fear that he can plant in your head. And so here's what I do when scarcity pops up. Hi, I'm Justin Buonamo, and this is Wisdom is Wealth. Wisdom is Wealth is designed to give you guys practical insights, modern strategies, and even timeless philosophies around gaining wisdom in your life. The wiser we get, the wealthier we will become. This podcast really is inspired by the book of Proverbs in the Bible, which was written by King Solomon, who prayed to God for wisdom and as a byproduct became the wealthiest person to ever live. If he was still alive today in present day, he'd be worth $1.3 trillion with a T. Not because he prayed for wealth, but he prayed to God to give him wisdom. And as he grew wiser, as a byproduct, he grew wealthier, particularly financially, but not just stopping there, in every facet of his life. And in my own life, I have realized that the wealthier I become, it's truthfully just because I have become wiser in life. I'm gonna bring on guests that are incredibly successful, incredibly amazing human beings, and have an amazing financial wealth that they've grown for themselves. And they're gonna share wisdom on their life experience in totality in hopes that something becomes valuable for you to implement in your process, in your life, and in your journey, and see how wisdom truthfully is wealth. Welcome back to another episode of Wisdom is Wealth. I'm super excited about today's lesson because it was kind of last minute, not out of a lack of planning, but I had another episode topic lined up. And I got a message from one of my clients this morning asking me a question, which then led me to shifting the episode title and topic to her question and my answer to it. And so I got a question this morning, or a voice message from one of my incredible clients, and she's doing a bunch of amazing things when it comes to her money, herself, her business. But a big part of that, like when we're growing through our old money story and trying to build new habits and be abundant, is old habits start to kick back in from time to time, because transformation, it's not a clean jump. And so this client, she asked me this question this morning. She said, when scarcity starts to leak back in, what do you do in the moment to overcome it? And so today's lesson is going to be called, or not lesson, I teach so many lessons, bear with me. I'm not even going to cut that, let that run. Today's episode is called How to Overcome Scarcity Thoughts When They Show Up. And so it was such a good question, because even in my situation, right, I've realized that my scarcity thoughts still show up quite frequently. I'm just realizing, a lot of the things that I went through in my childhood, particularly when my parents filed for bankruptcy and the things that happened as a result, I'm still dealing with some repercussions from that. I'm still working through a lot of fears and limiting beliefs. And so even with what I do for a living, and thank God for the success that he has granted me with business, financially, and in other areas of life, I still carry frequent scarcity thoughts. And so just the difference is over time, I've become better at combating them in the moment. And so I've got a couple of things here that I want to go over that I utilize in the moment when scarcity thoughts pop up to overcome them and move on to bigger and better things, instead of allowing them to hold me back, keep me in my comfort zone, and ultimately allow me to self-sabotage because I'm going to new levels that my ego and my nervous system aren't comfortable with. And so they try to leak in with these negative thoughts, these scarcity feelings. And I love the quote that says, unlike God, the devil doesn't need a relationship with you. He just needs an opportunity. And sometimes that opportunity is just a mustard seed of scarcity, a mustard seed of doubt, a mustard seed of fear that he can plant in your head. And so here's what I do when scarcity pops up. And number one is I pray. I hand it over to God. I think throughout my own journey, I've been kind of one foot in the door, one foot out the door when it comes to my relationship with God. And a part of that has to do with me not bringing everything to him, or me not thinking I need everything in him, or I need him in everything, or me being afraid or ashamed to bring some things to him. Some things like money and business. In the past, I've been like, you know what, God, I need you for this bucket of things or these topics, but over here, money, business, I got it. I don't need you. Obviously, that's not true, and God has humbled me extremely over the years to correct me and point me in the right direction on that, which is I definitely do need him in those categories. But one thing that I've also done is I've also avoided him out of shame and guilt a lot of times, where it's like, why am I feeling anxious like this? Why do I have these scarcity thoughts? Or I'm an avoider. So And like when those scarcity thoughts pop up, I feel like if I pray to God about them, or if I felt historically that if I prayed to God about them, I'm acknowledging them and then they must be real, and that, me praying to God about them wasn't a good avoidance strategy, right? And so point being is there's many things throughout my walk with God that I have not brought to him, and anxiety or scarcity thoughts being one of them for forever. And now saying this out loud and looking back, I'm like, why? Why? Because over the past 6 months, every time a scarcity thought pops up, I do my absolute best in the moment to pray to God. God, I'm feeling a scarcity thought. I'm feeling fearful. Right? I don't like this feeling. I don't think it's allowing me to serve you to the best of your ability. I think it's a wedge in between you and I. Help me work through this. Help me understand what you want me to think about this, how you want me to move through this, how I can play my part. What's true in this? Because a lot of times, most times, the anxiety or the scarcity thought that you're feeling most times aren't from God. And so if they're not, they're usually being used by the enemy as a wedge in between you and God, right? And so you don't want that to happen. You don't want that wedge in between you and God. And if God is using that anxiety or those scarcity thoughts, or if it is from him, there's something he's trying to teach you with that in the moment. And so bringing it to God. Hey, God, I'm feeling this way. Help me see through this. Help me work through this. Help me handle this in a way that you're calling me to do that ultimately glorifies you. So step one, as soon as the scarcity thoughts pop up, I pray and I hand it over to God and I partner with him. And so after that, putting God first, praying and handing over it, I then lean on what I call the objectivity, the black and white. What are the numbers actually saying? Where are you actually standing right now financially? And so you've often probably heard me say in past podcasts that the majority of people's stresses and anxieties around money come from what I call subjectivity or non-factual information. Not being insensitive to anybody's feelings, but a lot of times subjectivity comes from emotions usually rooted in fear. And so we're like, I think I'm losing it all, or I think I'm spending too much, or I think that my savings account is dwindling, or I think that this financial or this credit card debt I have is going to be too much to get out of, or costing me too much money, right? I think I should be making more money. All of that, those just few examples of all of the I think, right? There might be some truth in it, but most times there's some subjectivity. And if there is some truth in there, it's usually strongly heightened or intensified falsely by our fear, right? Because when you don't fully know what's going on, you don't feel like you're in control of your money, you don't know the numbers, you don't know the objectivity, and unnecessarily stresses you out because when you don't feel like you're being responsible, or you don't feel like you're in control of something, when there's all of these question marks, that's what creates the stress. And so that's what creates scarce thoughts. I find that after I pray, 95% of the scarcity thoughts or the fear that I'm facing with my money can be solved by just leaning on the objectivity, asking myself, what are the numbers actually saying? Then from there, I have a clear picture of what's going on. So then I can actually be realistic about A, what's going on in the first place, and B, how to step up and solve it and work through it. And most times after you put objectivity to it, though you may not be still pumped with the numbers, you'll feel a heck of a lot better because you know the numbers. You're empowered through understanding what's going on, which allows us to now start to work through it. So lean on the numbers, right? Don't get me wrong. Emotions are a part of the process, right? We got to work through them, but don't let them sit in the driver's seat. Replace the subjectivity with objectivity and you'll feel a heck of a lot better. So that's number two. The third part is after I have the objectivity and after I've prayed, I ask myself, how can I play my part? What's one thing I can do to step up? I've surrendered these anxieties and these scarce thoughts over to God, but now what do I need to do? Right? Okay, can I step up and budget? Can I step up and look at my goal plans? Can I step up and call my financial advisor or my financial coach? Do I need to have a sit-down meeting with my significant other? Like, what am I being called to do to play my part to the best of my ability? Like, where can I step up and do better? Where are my areas of opportunity, right? How can I play my part while God plays his? Does that make sense? Well, I guess you can't respond to me. So if it does, nod your head wherever you're listening to this. Well, I move on to the fourth one, which is after those first three, I ask myself, where's my highest leverage point? Or what's the best use of my time and energy? And so I'll give you a simple example. Like, I only spend the necessary amount of time on expenses and debt. After that, if I'm spending too much time on expenses and debt, I'm obsessing over something that's holding me back from utilizing my time and my energy towards a much higher leverage point, which is, okay, how can I go earn more money? I'm not going there immediately. I'm starting with, okay, how can I budget? How's my goal plans looking? Savings good, debt under control, expenses, how we doing there? Great, I covered those bases. Anything more would be unhealthy obsession, right? With things that aren't your highest leverage point, right? Once those things are in place, once you're responsible with the bare minimum and the necessities around savings, expenses, debt, etc., we want to shift our focus to the highest leverage point, which for me in my unique situation is, okay, let me go earn more now, right? Because I can go earn more because I have the stewardship, the systems, the strategies, and the intentionality in place where earning more is not going to be a problem. It's going to be stewarded well. And so after I spend the necessary amount of time on expenses and debt and savings plans, I shift my energy. Okay, how can I go now make as much as I possibly can make? That's my highest leverage point. I ask you to think and identify yours, right? What is your highest leverage point? And that allows you to start making momentum and progress to ultimately starting to get out of these scarce thoughts by showing yourself you can take action, you can make traction, and you can start seeing results if you hand it over to God and then step up and play your part. Which leads me into my fifth point here. When I was talking to my client this morning, I said, also remind yourself of history. Right? Look back. Every time that you were worried, God provided. Right? Every time that you were worried, things worked out. Right? And her and I, particularly in this conversation, we both alluded to us being in our best financial situation that we've ever been in. Right? And so we look back, and not only has it worked out, not only has God provided every single time we got worried, but we're sitting in a moment, in a reality where we're the best financially we've ever been. So of course it's going to work out. The history says it will. Right? The data's there, and that's why God puts you through those things, puts you through the tension where you're like, oh my God, is this going to work out? What am I going to do here? So he could show up and deliver and provide to build your faith that he provides, right? He puts you through the tension, puts you through adversity. He's given you these financial problems and these financial worries in the past so you can hand it over to him and watch him work and show that he does show up and provide, especially when we play our part. That's called building our faith. Right? Building our faith through experience, building our faith by letting God work, looking back at the history and like, of course, God's going to provide. He did every other time, right? So remind yourself of the history. The last thing I'll leave you with is, I love the quote. I say this to myself every single day when I get worried. I said, if I'm playing my part and we serve an incredible God, of course it's going to work out. Or why wouldn't it work out? If I step up and play my part, and God is who we say he is. God is who we think he is. And obviously much more than a human brain can even wrap their mind around, right? If we serve that such an incredible God, which we do, and we're playing our part, of course it's going to work out. Why wouldn't it? So I constantly remind myself of that. I go down this checklist, and the sixth thing I get to, I say, okay, I'm playing my part, and I serve a prosperous, beautiful, incredible God. Of course it's going to work out, right? And usually most times when I remind myself of that, a lot of the scarcity falls away. And so, again, I had a different topic planned for today, and I'm sure I'll rip that lesson or that episode in the future at some point. But I heard that question today, the response that came out of my mouth, coupled with how I felt afterwards, I heard from God, man, this has got to be the podcast episode today. And so today's episode was called How to Overcome Scarcity Thoughts When They Pop Up. And it's not a matter of if they pop up, it's when and what we do with them. Right. And so maybe over time, less and less, they pop up less and less, right? But they're still going to be there. And the difference isn't if they pop up, the difference is what we do with them when they pop up. And these were my 6 things. Pray, lean on the objectivity, right? Ask yourself how you can play your part. 4th, ask yourself what the highest leverage point is, right? What's the best use of your time and energy? 5th, remind yourself of history. And 6, tell yourself, if you're playing your part and we serve an incredible God, why wouldn't it work out? And so I hope this episode equips you, right, to work through the scarcity thoughts when they pop up. Give yourself permission that it's going to happen. They're going to pop up, right? The difference is what we do with them. And so here's 6 amazing things that you could do with them. I could have stopped at 1, right? Praying is just so powerful. Remember that. Remember that in the moment when they pop up, first thing, stop and pray. Stop and pray. And I promise you, you'll start to see the results. You'll start to see the shifts. God doesn't want you alone in those negative thoughts, right? It's a huge leverage point of the enemy. He uses it as a wedge between you and God. So as soon as you pop up, not only don't let it be a wedge, but resort to the best source in the world, the main source, the only source, God. And then run through the rest of this list. And I promise you, you'll get better at combating these icky scarcity thoughts when they pop up, which will then lead to you attracting and formulating a much better financial future. And so, as always, I hope that this episode helped. Share, subscribe, download, come back to this. And as I mentioned, share with somebody else that you know is fighting scarcity thoughts, right? Send this to them and tell them to thank you later. And so, as always, I appreciate y'all. Thank you for coming back to another episode of Wisdom is Wealth, and we'll see you in the next episode.